All right. So the Zimmerman case is basically a clusterfuck. Um, so what happened was George Zimmerman, like, apparently was some sort of neighborhood watch volunteer or whatever. Maybe he was part of the neighborhood watch, maybe not. I don't know. I've seen conflicting reports on that. It was some guy perceived the neighborhood in peril, so he was wandering around, keeping an eye out on the neighborhood, whatever. Um, and He ended up confronting a young African American child, and a fight broke out, and Zimmerman was getting his ass handed to him, and so he perceived himself in mortal danger and shot the child. That, in a nutshell, is what happened. Um, Now, what follows this is just an insane, well, clusterfuck. Um, so, what brought this to national attention was that charges weren't pressed against Zimmerman when this first happened. Uh, and they were saying that the argument is that it's because of institutionalized racism. Um, the problem with this is the police wanted to file charges. So the cops that responded to the scene where they found young Trayvon dead, um, they wanted to press manslaughter charges, and they actually filed the paperwork to the state to do so. Um, but they were overruled because, well, the state looked at the evidence, and they came to the conclusion that he would be able to claim protection under the Stand Your Ground law, the Florida Stand Your Ground law. So they chose not to press charges because, obviously, if you press charges and you take Mr. Zimmerman to court, he's going to be found not guilty. The state would have wasted a large amount of resources attempting to do the impossible, so they didn't do it. It has nothing to do with institutionalized racism or racism on the part of the police at all. Like, again, the police wanted to file charges. And I'm going to be providing a whole lot of links to everything I'm talking about here. So the police wanted to file charges. In fact, one of the officers that wanted to file charges is apparently, I guess, a victim of this whole ordeal, so he's being transferred, which is weird because he wanted to file charges. So, whatever. And then, so moving on here, the national uproar over it, which in my, I can see why it obvious. I mean, a child died. Of course, there's going to be a national uproar over it. Um, and So the charges were pressed. Zimmerman got off because of the Stand Your Ground law. Because Zimmerman's nose was broken and the back of his head was gashed up because he was getting, smacked in the concrete. Um, you know, does that justify what Zimmerman was doing? No. But because of the Stand Your Ground law, he got off. In a normal state, without Stand Your Ground, he would have got convicted of manslaughter charges because he initiated it, because he was following Trayvon. Um, but because Florida is a weird state with Stand Your Ground law, uh, because Trayvon confronted Zimmerman and beat him to the ground and broke his nose and such, Zimmerman was able to use lethal force because of Stand Your Ground, and it counts as self-defense. So none of this has to do with racism. It all has to do with just insane laws in Florida. Um, like really insane laws. Lately, they've been bringing up the case of to argue that it's all racism. They brought up the case of a woman in Florida who was sentenced to 20 years incarceration for using a firearm to frighten off her abusive husband. Now, this sounds outrageous, and it is. A 20-year sentence is just outrageous for what she did. But again, this has nothing to do with racism and everything to do with Florida having fucked up laws. The reason a judge sentenced her to 20 years is because that's the law. He doesn't have an option. He can't say, oh, here's, probation, or he doesn't have discretion. He has to sentence her to 20 years. It's the law. It's the law. He doesn't have a choice. And she also used stand your ground and stand your ground defense. The problem with her case is she left because they were arguing, they're fighting, and I wouldn't be surprised if he was an abusive husband. I mean, I bet he probably was. But she left the premises, went out to her car, got the gun, then came back into the premises. All right? Then she shot the firearm in front of, I guess, her children and this guy, and I guess the guy and the kids ran outside. Whatever, but she left and got the gun. It's not that she had the gun and she was being attacked and she used it in self-defense. She left and went and got the gun, then came back. So the stand your ground defense doesn't apply to her because she wasn't standing her ground. She went and got a gun and came back. So, but does that mean she should be sentenced to 20 years incarceration? No, that's horrible. That's wrong. But it is the law in Florida. So again, this has nothing to do with racism and everything to do with fucked up laws in Florida. Another thing that's been, I want to comment on is the media. The media, in my opinion, has been just misreporting left and right. Like, just misreporting this entire, like, all of these incidents is just maddeningly misreporting everything. A case in point, George Zimmerman. The argument is if it was inverted, so if it was Trayvon Martin doing the community patrol and George Zimmerman looking suspicious, and in the same scenario happened, Trayvon would be with a broken nose and his head being hit into the ground or into the pavement. That then Trayvon, the same scenario, he uses a gun to shoot Zimmerman, and that we'd have an inverse prosecution, so he'd be found guilty. I don't think he would. Under Florida law, he would have got this. The same thing would have happened. It's just how Florida law is. The thing that's disturbing about this is, if you did do the inversion, I don't think it would matter, of course, but it's not the way they're presenting it. So Zimmerman is not white. He's Latino. So if you invert it, that would make like Trayvon, or yeah, he would. Well, if you invert it, because Trayvon. Well, anyhow, he's Latino. So inverting it doesn't make Trayvon white or Zimmerman black or what have you. Zimmerman is Latino. Trayvon was an African American child. That's just disturbing, though. And if all the media outlets keep saying that it's white racism against Trayvon, but he's Hispanic or Latino. I prefer to use the term Latino because Hispanic's kind of weird. But he's Latino. So yeah, he's not white. So I don't understand this. But I don't. The thing that gets me is it's just constantly reported that he's white, but he's Latino. He's a Latino. He's not white. Um, and the clusterfuck continues across the internet. So I've seen various conspiracy theories now saying, for example, that this was orchestrated by Barack Obama, because Obama said that if he had a son, his son would look like Trayvon. That's not a conspiracy. That's a statement of fact. If Obama had a son, his son would look like Trayvon. It's fact. Um, it, so there's the right wingers on here on YouTube are using this as some sort of weird conspiracy theory that Obama is using this whole case, that somehow Obama blew this up. I don't understand how he did it, or how they think he did it, because well, obviously he didn't, because it's retarded. But that he's using this as some sort of conspiracy to hide all the various scandals and stuff, and none of this has to do with Obama. None of it at all. This is crazy. But yeah, I mean, I'm seeing right wing conspiracies like that across the internet here, and I'm seeing just a clusterfuck explosion of racism, just huge amounts of racism across the board. Everybody. I've seen arguments where the fact that Zimmerman's a Latino, where it's presented that, hey, he's not white, he's a Latino. I've seen a counter argument. Well, okay, that's true, but he's culturally white. What the fuck does that mean? You can't be culturally white. Like, that's really broad. I mean, white people are from, like, Ireland, Germany, Sweden, France. These are different cultures. It's the same. It's the same as saying that somebody's culturally Latino. You can't be culturally Latino. Latinos are composed of people from Mexico, Cuba, Argentina, Chile, various other countries in South America. That's what constitutes a Latino. So to say somebody is culturally white or culturally Latino, or I mean, that's insane. That's an insane statement. So I see these arguments and I'm just like, that's fucking insane. Um, so I mean, yeah, and so it's just all of this is deflecting from a real issue, um, and that the states are passing fucked up laws. It has nothing to do with racism. Like a 20-year minimum sentence if a gun is involved in any type of crime. Period. Like, you don't have to hurt anybody. You just have to shoot the gun. That's fucked up. But it's the law in Florida. Um, so yeah, I mean, this has led to just racial tirades across the internet, and it's all like, I blame the media because of all this misreporting. Like, it's just, well, anyhow, I'm going to provide all the links down below. If you disagree with me, feel free to give me a holler and yell at me. But, you know, I call it as I see it. Like, the media is misreporting this. So it's just misreporting. It's not true. Like, he's a Latino, not white. Like, I mean, that's a fact. It's not something you can just, like, dismiss. But anyhow, like I said, I'm going to leave all the links below to all the stuff I was talking about here, and you can read it for yourself. Yeah.